Srimad, His Divine Loving Grace, Abhay Charananavinda, Bhaktivedanta Swami, Srila Prabhupada. ISKCON founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki. BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada ki. Jayam Vishnupad Paramahamsa Acharya. I start there, Srimad, His Divine Loving Grace, Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Goswami Maharaj Prabhupada ki. Ananta Koti Vaishnava Vrinda ki. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur ki. Prem Sekaho Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shri Vasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda ki. Shri Shri Radha Krishna Gopa Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan ki. Shri Vrindavan Dham ki. Shri Mayapur Navadvip Dham ki. Shri Chaitra Jagannath Puri Dham ki. Ganga Mai ki. Yamuna Mai ki. Bhakti Devi Tulsi Maharani ki. Harinam Sankirtan Yagya ki. Hare Krishna Mantra ki. Bhagavatam ki. Madhava ki. Shri Shri Gauranitai ki. Shri Sitaram Lakshman Hanuman ki. Sina Singade Prahlad Maharaj ki. Shri Giriraj Govardhan Maharaj ki. Nitai Gaur Premanande. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories, all glories, all glories to Shri Shri Guru and Shri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. And close the door. Yeah. Flies getting there. It's super hot. Yeah. Om Ajnana Tamarandhyasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Militam Yena Tasmai Sri Gurue Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeyam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagajatam Sagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishakanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Visubhanu Suti Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namaste Girirajaya Shri Govardhana Namane Ashesha Klesha Nashaya Paramananda Daine Vancha Kalpatarabhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyeva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namah Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Srivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Narayanam Namaskritta Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devyam Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udirayat Nastapreshu Abhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtaki Mare Kabando Mat Sangin Mad Guru Manmadana Mad Nistaraka Mad Bhagya Mad Ananda Namostate Asaru Saru Tadayan Atini Chotatakara Namucha Karachimam Premna Ritkatayos Ajanu Lambita Bhuja Kanaka Vadata Sankirtanaka Pitara Kamalai Taksha Vishwambara Dujavara Yukadama Pala Vande Jagat Priyakaro Karuna Avatara. Hare Krishna. So reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 4, Creation of the Fourth Order, chapter number 28. King Pranjana becomes a woman in his next life. Text number 35 and 36. Tatra Chandra Vasanama Tamraparni Vatodaka Tatpunya Sarir Nityam Ubhayatrat Mano Mijan Kandastibir Mula Palai Pushpa Parnais Trinodakai Bhaktamana Sanirgatra Karshanam Tapa Astita Tatra Chandra Vasanama Tamra Parani Vatodaka Tatpunya Salile Nityam Ubayatro Man Ubayatra Mano Mejan Kandashtibir Mula Palai Pushpa Parnais Trinodakai Vartamana Shanir Gatra Karshanam Tapa Ashtita. Okay, someone can read the first, someone can read the second, someone can read the first.
Tatra Chandra Vasanama Tatra Chandra Vasanama
Tatra Chandra Vasanama
Tamra Parni Vatodaka
Parni Vatodaka Tatpunya Salile Nityam Ubayatrat Mano Mrijan
Kandashtibir Mula Palai
Kandashtibir Mula Palai
Pushpa Parnais Trinodakai
Pushpa Pranais Tranodakai
Vartamana Shanair Gatra
Vartamana Shanigatra Karshanam Tapa Ashtita Tatra Chandra Vasanama Tamrapani Vatodaka Bharatra Mano. Okay, word for word. Tatra, there. Chandravasa, the Chandravasa River. Nama, named. Tamrapani, Tamraparni, the Tamraparni River. Batodaka, the Batodaka River. Tat, of those rivers. Punya, pious. Salilai, with the waters. Nityam,
Nityam,
daily.
daily.
Ubhayatra,
Vayatra,
in both ways.
both ways.
Atmanaha,
Atmana,
of himself.
himself.
Rajan,
Rajan,
washing.
washing.
Khanda,
Kanda,
bulbs.
bulbs.
Ashtidibihi,
Ashtivi,
and by the seeds.
and by seeds.
Mula,
Mula,
roots.
roots.
Palai,
Palai,
and by fruits.
and by fruits.
Pushpa,
Pushpa,
flowers.
flowers.
Parnai,
Parnai,
and by leaves.
and by leaves.
Trina,
Pina,
grass.
grass.
Udukai,
Udukai,
and by water.
and by water.
Vartamana,
Vardhamana,
subsisting.
subsisting.
Shanai,
Shanai,
gradually. Gatra,
Gatra,
his body.
body.
Karshanam,
Darshanam,
rendering within.
rendering fit.
Tapaha,
Tapa,
austerity.
austerity.
Ashtitaha,
Astita,
he underwent.
he underwent.
Translation. In the province of Kulachala, there were rivers named Chandravasa and Tampraparni and Votodaka. King Malayadwaja used to go to those pious rivers regularly and take his bath there. Thus he purified himself externally and internally. He took his bath and ate bulbs, seeds, leaves, flowers, roots, fruits, and grasses, and drank water. In this way he underwent severe austerities. Eventually he became very skinny. Please repeat. In the province of Kulachala,
In the province of Kulachala,
there were rivers
there were rivers.
named Chandravasa,
Chandravasa,
Tamraparni,
Tamraparni,
and Vatodaka.
Vatodaka.
King Malayadwaja
King Malayadwaja
used to go to those pious rivers regularly
used to go to those pious rivers regularly.
and take his bath there.
Take his bath.
Thus he purified himself
Thus he purified himself
externally
externally
and internally.
and internally.
He took his bath and ate bulbs,
He took his bath and ate bulbs,
seeds,
seeds,
leaves,
leaves,
flowers,
flowers,
roots,
roots,
and grasses, and drank water.
and drank water.
In this way,
This way,
he underwent severe austerities. Eventually, he became very skinny. Purport. We can definitely see that to advance in Krishna consciousness, one must control his bodily weight. If one becomes too fat, it is to be assumed that he is not advancing spiritually. Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur severely criticized his fat disciples. The idea is that one who intends to advance in Krishna consciousness must not eat very much. Devotees used to go to forests, high hills, or mountains on pilgrimages, but such severe austerities are not possible in these days. One should instead eat only prasad, and no more than required. According to the Vaishnava calendar, there are many fasts, such as Ekadasi, and the appearance and disappearance days of God and his devotees. All of these are meant to decrease the fat within the body so that one will not sleep more than desired and will not become inactive and lazy. Overindulgence in food will cause a man to sleep more than required. This human form of life is meant for austerity, and austerity means controlling sex, food, intake, etc. In this way, time can be saved for spiritual activity, and one can purify himself both externally and internally. Thus, both body and mind can be cleansed. Fat brahmacharis. Bad sign for me, folks. Fat.
Yeah, because you're so fat.
So, it's a nice verse. It's really nice to talk about because it's something that a lot of devotees I don't think understand properly. And therefore, they either go too far or they don't go enough. In Bengali out there. So why is austerity necessary? Anybody know?
All the senses.
Why? Why control the senses?
To be more Krishna conscious, focused, and spiritual.
Why does controlling the senses help us become more Krishna conscious?
Purifying, we're not focusing on ourselves.
Okay, somewhat right. So austerity is necessary because it helps us to understand we're not this body. That's simply it. So we're doing austerities to realize that
We're not this body. That's the proper consciousness behind austerities, because the things that we're being austere in regards to, the senses, trap us in bodily conceptions of life, correct? So in that way, austerity is necessary for real self-realization. So austerity is necessary to place us in the platform of Brahman. Brahmabhuta prasanatma nasochti nakamshati samasarveshu bhuteshu madbhaktim labhate pran. So one who is thus transcendentally situated, doesn't desire or hanker, sees all living entities equally, and in that stage he can attain bhakti. So this is real austerity. This is why austerity is necessary. It places us in the platform of Brahman. However, we find that so much of the time austerities can be a great source of trouble for the practitioner of spiritual life. If not done in the proper consciousness, austerities, rather than enhance one's spiritual life, they hinder one's spiritual life. And there's plenty of examples of that. The first that comes to mind is, of course, Vishwamitra Muni. He was doing so many austerities, but to what avail? He became agitated by Urvasi and fell down. So there's so many examples of how austerities are not actually the goal in itself. Krishna says, it's not by austerity that I am attained. There's, of course, the famous story of the brahmachari who was drinking only milk. He was drinking only milk, and he was thinking, yes, I'm going to see Lord Chaitanya. I want to see Lord Chaitanya. I want to go in the kirtan. So he came to Srivasta Kaur and he begged Srivasta Kaur, please let me into the kirtan. I want to see Lord Chaitanya. I'm very austere, very pure brahmachari. And he came into the kirtan, but look, Srivasta Kaur knew that Lord Chaitanya wouldn't let him, so he said, you can just hide in the corner, and you can see Chaitanya Mahaprabhu dancing. And Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was trying to get into the kirtan, and then he says, something's wrong here. Something's wrong, something's off. Someone's here who shouldn't be here. And then Lord Chaitanya discovered this brahmachari and kicked him out and chastised him severely. Don't you ever come back here, get out of here. And it was very sad, for the brahmachari. Lord Chaitanya later approached him and said, you think that it's by milk, by doing austerities, that simply by drinking milk I can be attained? So austerities are not the way to actually develop our spiritual consciousness. Rather, right, we were hearing in the third canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, you hear about the creation of Rudra from Lord Brahma's eyes. Lord Brahma's done so much austerities, then he begins to create, and the four Kumaras appear. And the four Kumaras immediately say, I'm not interested in, progeny, putting forth population. We're going to perform austerities. We're going to remain children and brahmacharis for the rest of our existence. And so, first thing Brahma does, his first children, totally disobey him. So then, out of his eye, Rudra comes. Rudra is very angry. And so then Brahma gives Rudra certain places he can stay. He tells him you can stay here, here, here. And one of those places Rudra exists is austerity. That principle of anger exists in austerity also. So they can be a great source of trouble if not understood in the proper way. Krishna says, Bhoktaram yagitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram sarabhutam suridam sarvabhutanam gyatamam shantam richiti. Krishna explains that Bhoktaram yagitapasam, I am the beneficiary. I'm the beneficiary of all austerities and yagyas and sacrifices. Therefore, yagya and sacrifice should be done for the pleasure of Krishna, not for our own pride, not for our own ego, not to help us get mystic powers or so many different things. Yagya and austerity are done for the pleasure of Krishna. This is why one should do yagya and austerity. So therefore, Krishna condemns austerities in the mode of passion and ignorance in the Bhagavad Gita. Rather, austerity in the mode of goodness is that which comes in accordance with our natural duties. So they can be a source of pride. They can be a source of distraction. Rather than focusing on the actual subject matter of devotional service, which is Krishna. Krishna is the goal of austerity. Bhoktaram yagya-tapasam. Krishna is the goal of austerity. But rather than focusing on Krishna, they become a distraction, where the austerity in itself becomes a goal. For instance, let me be very austere this Ekadasi and sleep all day rather than chant Hare Krishna. So this is an example of austerity in the mode of ignorance. No knowledge behind the austerity. Of course, I do like to fast on Ekadasi sometimes from everything. Nirjala Ekadasi is next, and we'll be doing that if possible. But only if you can actually do it for the proper purpose of attaining Krishna, serving Krishna. Not that I austerities in an ignorant way, and they can lead to confusion. So all the austerities ultimately lead to Krishna. Bhaktiram yagya tapasam sarva lokameshwaram. So austerity in the course of our service is beneficial. This is the point here, is that austerity is natural. There are natural austerities which come about in the course of our services, of our ashrams. Right? One of the austerities of the ashram, all people should perform this austerity. But one of those natural austerities is rising early. This is a natural austerity that we rise early. Very, very difficult for a lot of people to rise early in the morning, attend Mangal Arti. And another austerity is going to bed on time. One of the first things, Ananta Prabhu, you told me when I moved into the temple, you said, it's easy to get up early. It's easy enough to get up early, but the hardest thing is going to bed on time. Well, you told that to me first. So anyways, in that sense, there's an austerity there. That the austerity is that I'm actually arranging and organizing my life in such a way that I can properly perform and execute devotional service. So these are natural austerities. One of the austerities of our spiritual lives as brahmacharis or as temple devotees is the austerity of study. I need to let go of my own mental concoctions and my own desires and my own desire to engage in fruitive activities and engage in the process of study. It's part of the process. So these are natural austerities, not that I'm not eating very much, Prabhu, but I'm also not studying. I'm also not doing so many actually prescribed austerities. We have prescribed austerities. Right? One of those, of course, it's not an austerity. In the beginning, it may be. But chanting the holy name is a nice yagya, the one most wonderful sacrifice. Krishna says, of sacrifices, I am japa. So we can arrange our lives in such a way that this yagya is performed very nicely. We'll perform this yagya very nicely, rather than do so many other nonsense things to make me feel good about myself. This is a type of improper austerity. Right? So we have austerities in course of our service, and what to speak of those people who perform great austerities to spread Krishna consciousness. That's real austerity. Sometimes we have to stay up late for the right reason, meaning that we're preaching to someone. And, they are asking questions. And this is a moment where, by doing that, they can become a devotee. And we've seen this work, that I've had to stay up many late nights with different people who are now sitting in this room. Divya Singha Prabhu, I would go and pick him up all the way in Marana. And we'd end the Krishna Cove at 9:30, and then I would go to Marana and back. And by the time I get back, it's like 11 o'clock, and then I still go to Mangal Arti. The austerity comes out because now he's chanting Hare Krishna. So in that way, proper austerity is done in the course of our own service. So the brahmachari has his set of austerities, celibacy and so forth. And the grihastha has his set of austerities. Grihastha has the austerity of living with a family, the austerity of working, the austerity of also rising early and performing tapasya, giving charity in due course. In the due course of our duty, austerity is performed naturally. And in that way, they lead to Krishna. Of course, we're also practicing general austerities like following regulative principles. Like, no meat eating, no illicit sex, no intoxication, no gambling. So spiritual austerity is the goal, not material austerity. So we perform austerity for the sake of pride. That's considered austerity in the mode of passion. Right? Pride, self-pride. It's not really the proper way to be. Rather, we should perform austerity out of love. Just like a mother performs austerity out of love, right? She's always doing so much work, so much endeavor to love her children. And so out of love, we can perform austerities for Krishna. Out of love, we can perform austerities for the Guru, but not otherwise. So spirituality needs austerity, but that's not in itself the goal. So we should understand why we're performing austerity. It's very important. Why are we doing this? Why are we controlling our senses? Why am I living a life of austerity? Why am I doing these things? Of course, to attain Krishna, but it's not that those things in themselves are going to please Krishna. And there's so many things that demonstrate this. How austerities in themselves don't please Krishna. The most austere person of all time was Hiranyakashipu. He was the most austere person of all time. He, sat for thousands and thousands of years until he was just a skeleton. Yet he did not please Krishna.
On the tips of his toes.
Yeah, on the tips of his toes. So what's this? How do we actually please Krishna? So we have a tendency to condemn sense gratification, right? This is natural. It's our philosophy. Yehi samsparsha jabo ga dukkha yoniya evate ariyatamartha konteya natesha ramate buddha. Wise people don't delight in the pleasures of the senses because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. O son of Kunti. So we don't delight in such pleasures because such pleasures have a beginning and an end. However, I ask you, what about prasadam? Do we not delight in prasadam? Tasty prasadam? You had the opportunity between, tasty prasadam cooked by Mother Sundamini and, with love and offered with love, or what Omar Prabhu made last night, that delicious prasadam he made last night, or, very, very, bad prasadam, you choose the good prasadam. Naturally, Srila Prabhupada was very serious about good prasadam. That's sense gratification, right? But prasadam is Krishna, right? It's offered to Krishna. So the austerity is that we're taking only prasadam. Such an austerity. Very austere life. No, but the idea is that we can enjoy what comes in due course. Just like austerities will come in due course of our practice in Krishna consciousness. In the same way, enjoyment will also come. So therefore, one is not delighting in the sense that they're attached to, but they can enjoy when that prasadam comes. When Krishna offers you a cream puff, like last night, you take. However, we should be balanced. So, we tend to condemn sense gratification. Especially sex life is highly condemned by so many devotees because it's very entangling. But at the same time, on the other side of that, Krishna says, kamosmi. I am sex life, which is not contrary to religious principles. So how do we balance this? Krishna is prasad, but yet we don't want to be fat. We don't want to enjoy the prasadam. So is there that when we take nice prasadam, we just don't enjoy it? We got to make sure we're not enjoying. How does this work here? So bodily enjoyment comes in due course of time. And rather than, getting caught up in the mind of, guilt and so many things, we should accept it as Krishna based on our principles. So there's a purpose behind religious principles. It should be understood. There's a purpose behind all the religious principles. What is that purpose? Bhaktaram Yagatapasam. To please Krishna. There is a purpose behind them. The ultimate goal of all spiritual life is always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. This is the ultimate goal. So therefore, the mind or the living entity, especially, devotees, we don't want to become repressors of desire. Repression is not the answer, right? We don't want to become repression. Repression is actually condemned by Krishna. What use is repression, he says? What use can repression accomplish? How are we to rectify that? That I want that, that nice prasadam, or, I want this, I want that, rather than I'm just going to repress it, because repression is the other side of attraction, correct? Repression is the other side of attraction. So therefore, we have to, first and foremost, become devotees. That means become attached to Krishna. This is where Bhakti Yoga solves our problems. Karma Yoga can solve the problem of repression to a degree, but not to the degree that Bhakti Yoga can. Because Karma Yoga means that let me use whatever the modes of material nature are pushing me to do, let me use that in Krishna's service. That's good. But further than that, that's just offering the fruits to Krishna. That's pious. Like, okay, I'm going to get married and I'm going to do all the rituals and everything right, and I'm offering it to Krishna. It's cool. But further than that, because I'm attached to the certain activities involved in whatever materialistic activity I'm doing, if I'm attached to those activities, that's a lower level. But when I'm attached to Krishna, and I'm actually surrendering my life to Krishna, then in that case, Krishna will provide everything I need for my ultimate benefit. And that's a deep sense of faith that we can develop in our Bhakti Yoga. The idea that, what does God want me to do? God does not want everybody to be, sannyasis and brahmacharis. God doesn't want everybody to do that. That's a fact. Right? Krishna has so many things, but the more important point is are we surrendered to Krishna? Are we attached to Krishna? Rather than being attached to the work of I'm attached to detachment is also a type of Maya. That's called Falgu Vairagya. I'm attached to the sense of being detached, rather than being attached to Krishna. So there's so many instances of God arranging circumstances for his devotees that lead them exactly where they need to be, and they perform austerities in due course of their ashram and their varna. Correct? So one example is Maharaj Priyavrata. Maharaj Priyavrata was the son of Swayambhuva Manu and the brother of King Uttanapad and the uncle of Dhruva Maharaj. So Maharaj Priyavrata, although the elder, he went to the forest to perform great severe austerities, right? And he was extremely Krishna conscious. He was a great Mahabhagavat devotee of the Lord. And Uttanapad became king, and we're hearing now about Uttanapad's line, Maharaj Uttanapad's line of kings. We're hearing about Dhruva, and we heard about Prithu, and we heard about Vena and so forth, and Prachini Barstad and the Prachetas, all in the line of Maharaj Uttanapad, and the great devotee of the line of the great devotee Swayambhuva Manu, which was the original question asked in the third canto. Tell me about the line of Swayambhuva Manu. And so then in the fifth canto, we'll get to hear about Maharaj Priyavrata. And Maharaj Priyavrata, in the course of performing his austerities, was asked by Lord Brahma to become a householder. So he was asked in his service, I should become a householder. And he didn't want to. He was very attached to his austerities, but rather than being attached to the work, even if that work appears to be austere and spiritual, rather than being attached to the work, he was attached to Krishna. So let me do what Krishna wants me to do. Let me do what Krishna wants me to do. So Maharaj Priyavrata surrendered and became a householder. And he enjoyed all enjoyments therewith. And lived a very opulent, wonderful life. So in that way, he was engaging in what we can say was sense gratification, but is it sinful? Is it sinful sense gratification? No, it's actually attachment to Krishna. It's increasing attachment to Krishna. That's why Krishna can say, I am sex life. That's not contrary to religious principles. It's not that we have to have some artificial fear, artificial, repression in our heart of, I can't eat tasty prasadam, I can't, not that. Austerity in its due course of time, as a natural progression, that let me engage in work as it is attached to Krishna. So therefore, the most important thing we should do is attach ourselves to Krishna. Another example is Kardama Muni and Devahuti. And and Kasapya and Diti. Right? These are examples of materialistic householders and spiritual householders. So Kasapya and Diti both had material desires, right? Diti had a very intense material desire over here in the third canto, how she became very lusty. And she was very, very lusty, and she told Kasapya Muni, I need to have a baby. And he said, well, we can wait, it's probably a bad time. If we have a baby, Lord Shiva will be angry and we'll have a demon child. And she said, no, I need, right now. And so, he, although Prabhupada explains and our acharyas explain that he could have, been more firm in his conviction to perform the process of household life in the proper way. Rather not, he surrendered to that material desire, and the result was pretty catastrophic for the world, to say the least. Literally dropped the world in the ocean. So it was catastrophic results from that indulgence in sense gratification. So in that way, so much entanglement takes place, right? If we indulge in the wrong way in sense gratification. But it's not that the sense gratification itself is the problem. It's our attachment and our consciousness in regard to the sense gratification. Because we take prasadam, we have so many different types of sense gratification also. But the consciousness in regards, because if we're attached to the work and the fruits, that's Maya. But if we're attached to Krishna, then in due course of time, everything will come according to our devotional activities and according to our desire, according to what Krishna wants for us, what is our mission in life. In a similar way, Kasapya or Kardama Muni, right, he was also desirous of sense gratification. He was also desirous of getting married. So Kardama Muni, he was a great devotee of the Lord, and he was performing great austerities. He was meditating on the Lord, elevating his consciousness. And although in his heart he had this desire, he didn't act on it, right? He didn't go out and try to fulfill his material desire. Rather, he simply gave his heart to Krishna. Krishna, I'm giving myself to you. Let me do what you want me to do. Let me do what you want me to do. And then, if my desires are fulfilled, very nice. And if not, that's okay too, because I'm more attached to you than to sense gratification. And so Kardama Muni gave his heart to Krishna, and then Krishna appeared before him, right? And Kardama Muni, was honest with the Lord. But we can't lie to the Lord. We can't lie to the Lord and say, gratification, Krishna. I have no desire. I have no material desires, Krishna. Krishna knows our hearts. He knows that we have material desires or not. So, rather, one of the processes of devotional service is revealing our minds. Yes, I have this material desire, but I'm not going to act on it. I'm to you. I'm totally yours, Krishna. And if you want me to, the austerity in whatever I do, let me do for you. Bhoktaram Yagatapasam, because I'm controlling my senses for you, and I will only use my senses for you. This is Krishna consciousness. And so Kardama Muni expressed that, and the Lord said, no worries, very soon Mother Devahuti will appear, and all your desires will be fulfilled. And then, later down the line, Manu beams in, and he says, my dear sage, my dear Kardama, my daughter is of marriageable age, and I see yourself as an appropriate husband. Would you consider, marrying Devahuti? And so there's a very powerful passage that takes place here about how to deal with, material desires. And one of the things that Swayambhu Manu of course, he's a great devotee, so he can instruct. So he was instructing Kardama and saying that, because this has come of its own accord, it should be considered. Rather, if you had God, to seek your material desire. If I make a mission in life to serve my senses, I need sense gratification. Therefore, I'm going to surrender to Maya, and I'm going to, have a mission to go out and get sense gratification now. Whatever that be, pious or impious sense gratification, sinful or pious sense gratification. When that surrender happens, we're automatically in Maya, and all types of sense gratification based on attachment are ultimately sin, because they have nothing to do with Krishna. They have nothing to do with Krishna. Not that sense gratification in itself is a sin. That should be understood. Or else taking prasadam would be a sin. How can Krishna say, I am sex life, not contrary to religious principles, if sex life in itself is bad or evil or something? That's not the case. Rather, it's the attachment to such things that is innately sinful, because these things are temporary. So this is the point we're building up to, is the power and the peace and the joy and the love that we can have in our heart when we surrender to Krishna. There's so much there for us. There's so much fullness awaiting us if we surrender to Krishna, rather than letting the desires overwhelm us, letting us feel like I'm not doing what God wants me to do. Last night I was being very facetious in class. I kind of feel a little bad for it, but I was talking about the sky wizard and how we don't want to displease the sky wizard. This is the kind of consciousness of those who are, in this very low state of spiritual consciousness, that, if I play all the rules right, somehow or another, that pleases God. It's not that. It's actually the consciousness. And so the consciousness we develop, whether that be done through whatever ashram, whatever we may have to go through, that's what's important. And that comes from surrendering. So, of course, he said, Swayambhu said, yeah, this has come to you of its own accord. Therefore, it's worth considering, because if you go out and you seek sense gratification as a brahmana, as a sage, by going out and seeking sense gratification, you see, that his position is very elevated as a very elevated sage. If I go out and think, let me go out and find sense gratification, let me go out and find a wife, then you're taking this position of very high, elevated, saintly position and lowering him down. We see that in the case, right, of the Muni. He was seeing the fish. Is that Vishwamrita? That's not Vishwamrita. That's the. It's not Vishwamrita, no. Vishwamrita Muni is the one who. Sabari Muni. Yeah. Thank you, dear Pandit Ji. Yeah, Sabari Muni. So he was seeing the fish, copulate, and so what did he do? He actually went out and began to seek sense gratification, because his austerity wasn't based on Krishna. Right? It wasn't based on Krishna consciousness. It was just based on austerity. It wasn't based on attachment to Krishna. So now I have to go out and seek sense gratification, and therefore he degraded himself. And we know, the story. He married so many wives, and he came to his senses later on. So Swayambhu Manu offered Devahuti, and then Kardama accepted Devahuti. And what did Kardama do after? Kardama continued practicing Krishna consciousness. Very nicely practicing Krishna consciousness. And Devahuti practiced Krishna consciousness with him as a very chaste wife. So here she is, a princess, living the most opulent life. And Devahuti was so beautiful, demigods would fall out of the sky, and they'd see her playing ball on the roof of the palace. And so here it is, she's a princess. And so now she's married this sage, and it's austerity time. So austerity came in due course of time, right? She performed severe austerities, described how she was emaciated and so forth. And finally, in her humility, she approached Kardama and said, it's been a long time we've been performing austerities. Perhaps I can, perhaps you can give me a child, And, they're married, the time was right. And so then, Kardama Muni manifested, spiritual or not spiritual, but a mansion, spaceship, mothership thing. And, they go on a transcendental date for thousands of years, flying around the universe and enjoying sense gratification, right? And doing actually devotional service, because Kardama was a Prajapati, and that was his service. And Devahuti was also, Prajapati in that sense. And so children were there. And as a result of their sense gratification, of course, Lord Kapila was born. They were so pure and pious, even though they enjoyed immense sense gratification, they were able to have the Supreme Personality of Godhead as their child. And so we see an example of how Krishna says, I am sex life, not contrary to religious principles. So this is actually something to be celebrated rather than something to be condemned, because devotee children are born, very saintly devotee children can be born. And in fact, the Supreme Personality of Godhead is born in this case. This is actually wonderful. And so then the purification takes place, right? Rather than performing repression, which doesn't accomplish anything, rather using material desires in service of Krishna. If they come in due course, then we'll become purified of those material desires, which is a better position than trying to be an artificial renunciate. However, here's the point I want to make, that we don't want to be karma yogis. We want to be bhakti yogis. So bhakti yogis means we're attached to Krishna. And we're going to do whatever Krishna wants us to do, right? Krishna, if you want me to do this, I will do this. If you want me to do that, I will do that. Therefore, that is surrender. And when we actually engage in this process properly, that means we're chanting nicely, we're reading nicely, we're associating nicely, we're really actually experiencing Krishna in the form of the holy name, in the form of the devotees, in the form of Srimad Bhagavatam. What happens is we begin to know this personality whom we're surrendering to. No one wants to surrender to a personality of a negative nature, right? We don't want to surrender to, these dictators and politicians and so forth. But rather, when we surrender to Krishna, that Krishna, I will do whatever austerities in my life you wish me to do. And I will go through whatever I need to go through to attain you. And you know my heart, you know what I want, you know what my material desires are, you know my material needs. I'm giving it all to you. Leave it at the altar. And then the peace in our heart is there, that whatever happens to me is Krishna's will. And Krishna will take care of me, there's no doubt about that, because he is Suridam Sarvabhutanam. And whatever happiness I may attain, gratification that he gives me, or the austerity he gives me, one thing I know for sure is that because I'm surrendering to him, my relationship with him will give me real happiness, will give me real peace, will give me real joy. So let us not perform artificial austerity. We have our prescribed austerity. We have 4 regulative principles, 16 rounds, right? If we take those vows very seriously, whatever ashram we're in, we take those vows with full seriousness and engage in them. Let our consciousness become clear, and that clarity of consciousness will increase and enhance our ability to see what Krishna wants us to do. Tesham satatam yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yena mamupayanti te. Right? When we make Krishna the goal, we serve the spiritual master, then the intelligence from within comes that I know how to come to Krishna. I know what choices I should make. And I don't have to worry. I don't have to stress about my material desires. I don't have to condemn myself for having material desires even. Rather, I'm made a vow that I will only act on Krishna's behalf, whether that's in fulfilling material desires or not fulfilling material desires. I'll only act on Krishna's behalf. And in that way, we see how devotees become purified, and how devotees are people. That's how we humanize this devotional service, because I think sometimes it's very easy to become, unhuman. And especially if you don't read the CC, it's even easier. There's a sense of devotees are unhuman. We just, like military soldier robots, fanatics and whatnot. And so that's not devotional service. Rather, we see that in the CC, we see all pure devotees, they have regular lives also, in a sense, right? So most of Lord Chaitanya's associates are married people, not all of them, but even those who aren't, they get in trouble sometimes. And those who are, they have challenges, just like a Gopinath Patanayaka, where he was one of the brothers of Ramananda Roy. And, he was doing his business, but he was cheating a little, And so then he got caught, and they said, all right, you got to go off the, what is it, the Changa? I don't think it's that. They got to walk off a plank onto a bunch of swords, because the son of the king was very envious and hateful of this person. And so, they went to Lord Chaitanya and they said, can you save Gopinath? And Lord Chaitanya said, I'm a sannyasi. I'm not going to say, what did he do? And he said, well, he stole a little money, and now they're going to execute him. Lord Chaitanya said, well, if he stole money, then what can I do? He said, go ask Lord Jagannath. So they went to Lord Jagannath, right? And then he was saved by all these different things that happened. However, we see that, there's a normal circumstance, right? That devotees, they have normal lives. We hear about how Srivasta Kaur's son died, and they're living normal lives. They're devotees like us. It's not that they're like superhumans in this, impersonal way we see them, when we want to see the guru like some super impersonal thing. No, actually, they're normal people in a sense. There's transcendental people. They're not regular people. We don't want to see the guru as a regular normal person, but they're also human beings. They're not Krishna. And so in that sense, we have to be able to see holiness in all the activities of pure devotional service, whatever ashram, whatever position it may be, that actually they're holy people because they're doing it for Krishna and their attachment is to Krishna. And we see about, Akura. Akura is also Grihasta, also, very pure devotee, one of the perfected devotees of Krishna. However, we see he gets himself into trouble, right? When he gets in the dealings with Satyajit, and, there's that whole murder he's involved with there, which is, kind of a pretty intense bit of trouble. But he's Krishna's pure devotee. And we hear about Pundrik Vidyanidhi, right? Pundrik Vidyanidhi, Mukunda Datta Prabhu, Mukunda Datta, Lord Chaitanya's associate, he was telling Gadadhar Pandit of this great devotee, Pundrik Vidyanidhi, saying, oh, there's one great devotee, Pundrik Vidyanidhi. I'll take you to see him. And so they went into the room of Pundrik Vidyanidhi, and Pundrik Vidyanidhi was being fanned, and he had beautiful, oils and scents and nice cloth and silk, and he was chewing betel. And, Gadadhar Pandit thought, what kind of devotee is this? And Gadadhar Pandit was a lifelong Nishtik brahmachari, very austere. What kind of devotee is this? Who is this? And he looked at Mukunda Datta. And so then Mukunda Datta spoke one verse about the mercy of Krishna, how Krishna was even merciful to Putana. And Pundrik was sitting on a throne, and he heard the verse, and he fell off the throne, rolled down, and he went into trance for hours and hours and hours. And so in that way, even though he was engaged in so much sense gratification, he was respected. Gadadhar Pandit said, actually, he'd become my guru because I offended him. I'm going to take shelter of him. So his attachment was to Krishna. And the ultimate example of a householder, man who was involved in what you would say materialistic activities, not to be imitated, not to be tried this at home. Lord Chaitanya says, not even I can imitate Ramananda Roy. Ramananda Roy was a government official and a householder. And his attachment was so on Krishna that, it's described how he was, he would bathe the Devi Dasis, girls who would dance for Lord Jagannath, and he would touch them and massage them and touch he says touch their private parts, but he was like so austere, and he was so fixed in Krishna consciousness that it was like he was touching stone. It didn't affect him at all. We can't, and Lord Chaitanya said, no one can imitate Ramananda Roy, but that's an example of extreme Krishna consciousness, on the deepest and most intense level. So although we can't imitate Ramananda Roy, we can at least see that when we do this practice nicely, we just chant 16 rounds, we follow regular principles, and we tell Krishna, let me do what you want me to do. I don't care, what it is, if it's austerity, if it's sense gratification, let me do what you want me to do. And our attachment becomes Krishna. Because we're chanting nicely, we become attached to Krishna. Then we can have faith that whatever happens, it'll be good. That's for sure. Whatever happens, it'll be really good because Krishna's in charge. And in the end, we'll go back home, back to Godhead. So that's a way for a wonderful life. And that'll give us peace in our heart. That'll calm our material desires. Going back to that verse, Bhaktaram yagitapasam sarvalokam maheshwaram suridam sarvabhutanam gyatamam shantam rityati. We can have peace in our heart by that sense of surrender. So any questions, comments, realizations? Rita? Mataji?
Yeah, I'm really glad I've had that stage of life. But,
They call marriage the deep dark well.
Yeah.
Ideally, when a couple gets married, they perform in marriage according to religious principles. Sex life is only allowed once a month for getting children,
Yeah.
Krishna conscious children,
Of course.
after 50 rounds.
Yeah.
So that's really hard to do for a lot of devotees. And but that's Prabhupada's, that's the standard. And and because it's so difficult, that's why they call it a deep dark well. Because if you don't do that, you lose the plot. You can lose the plot very easily.
Yeah.
And Prabhupada also said that the sannyas, I read this, and I don't remember where I read it. He said that this sannyas is also a problem because one identifies himself as a sannyasi instead of servant of Krishna or the spirit soul. He thinks, I am a sannyasi.
Yeah.
So.
And that's the point I'm making is that, like the austerities in themselves are not the actual, that's not what's pleasing Krishna. That's not what makes you a good devotee. It's actually your heart. And so, yeah, there's going to be mistakes in whatever ashram actually, and whatever you can do. But the point is are you attached to Krishna? And to the degree we have attachment to Krishna, we can follow regulative principles because the regulative principles are to make us realize we're not this body and to make us realize that, especially ultimately, the ultimate instance of sex life is the ultimate thing that can make us think we're this body. It's very entangling in that sense. But when performing Krishna consciousness, it is purified. However, although, whatever, someone can't meet that standard, or if they can, in the sense that most important thing is, like Sharishwar Prabhu nicely said in last week's class, attachment to Krishna. When the main identity is that I'm a devotee of Krishna and I'm surrendered to Krishna and I'm surrendered to this sense that Krishna's ma may come, he's number one in my life, then purification will take place. And so we can have peace in our heart in that, that Krishna says, even if one is Sudarachar, they can become, and Sudarachar means, that's much worse than, illicit marital sex. That's like, jug eyes and mud eyes. Even if one is Sudarachar, then they can become purified if they are Bhajate Mama Nanyabhak. Krishna is the goal of my life. And so once again, that the main thing I always kind of end on this point in all my classes. The main thing we have is our chanting of Hare Krishna. When that is good, all the purification takes place, all of the clarity takes place, all of the surrender takes place, and we can, escape even the deep dark well. Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Andrika?
So when we first become devotees, we're already doing an austerity by following the 4 principles, regulative principles, and giving up, meat and all of that. So it's kind of an austerity that we feel that we're already doing. So when we're in touch with like prasadam and like that, and we think, oh, wow, this is really delicious. So we still, so we develop that taste of austerity in a sense from following the principles. So we should continue to have that taste even when we're around prasadam or even devotional service if we feel that a service is coming to us, and then we decide, hey, I don't really want to do this service, I want to do that. So there's like sort of a self-interest there,
no,
or
we can't have that self-interest. We have to
Yeah.
surrender. Attachment is to Krishna. That means opulent prasadam or less opulent prasadam. But I'm going to eat prasadam. That's the attachment. Let me eat prasadam. Don't let me eat non-prasadam. You know. And so, you know, we can enjoy the prasadam. You know, there's nothing wrong with saying this is good prasadam. If that was a problem, all of us would be, out of luck. So all sense gratification taken in terms of devotional service can be like that. You know, we don't have to like let the mind get all disturbed because of material desire. Rather, surrender to Krishna. Let him provide whatever he will provide, and let us become purified by that process of devotional service. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Is that clear? I'm trying to make sure I'm communicating that properly, rather than, hating ourselves for having desires or whatever. Let us just give it all to Krishna, and Krishna will, give us a path. But let me become attached to Krishna. And become attached to Krishna, and in that way, we see that no matter what we go through, because there's so many examples of in the scriptures, devotees make mistakes. Dhruva Maharaj got angry and slaughtered an entire race. It's a pretty big mistake there. I think that's a little worse than I slipped on a regular principle. I ate an onion yesterday. He actually slaughtered an entire race of people, but still, he recovered. So we can recover. We can recover, but he was always surrendered to Krishna. And that means, for us, we're not Dhruva Maharaj. We didn't do austerities, we didn't eat only air. That means we just chant good japa. Whatever we do, chant good japa, and try to follow the vows and try to, read. It's easy stuff. But if we do it, then, in that surrender, we'll have a lot of peace in our heart. No matter what we're going through, we'll have peace in our heart, which is, what else can we ask for? We can't be happy if we don't have peace. Okay. Srimad Bhagavatam ki.
So I should go stand on one foot